So, good morning. Today we're going to introduce the period which followed Elizabeth's golden age. So, after the death of Elizabeth, James VI, King of England, succeeded her to the throne as James I, becoming the first Stuart King of England. He was Protestant, he was a learned man. However, he ignored the parliament and based his rule on the theory of the divine right of kings. He believed that as a king, he was the representative of God on earth. One important event during his reign was that he joined Scotland to England and Wales as one kingdom with two separate parliaments, of course. This kingdom was called Great Britain, and he also introduced a flag called the Union Jack. The king settled in London, and he was a protector of the arts. That's why he became patron of Shakespeare's company, the King's Men. But let's see what happened under his kingdom from the religious point of view. We must say that also during Elizabeth's reign, many Protestant extremists opposed her. These extremists were called Puritans, and they really increased in number, and they started to become a problem for the kingdom. James tried to put an end to the struggle between the bishops and the Puritans. So he tried to solve this conflict, inviting them to a meeting in Hampton Court. But what happened there? That the Catholics had not been invited, so they felt excluded. So a group of them, led by Guy Fawkes, organized the Gunpowder Plot to blow up the parliament on the 5th November 1605. But likely they were found out, and so the plotters were executed. But the government didn't start a period of persecution against the Catholics. He tried and encouraged public celebration, and this became the annual event, the annual celebration that still today we know as Bonfire Night, which is a day when children don't go to school and many bonfires are lit up across the town or across the cities of the UK. A direct consequence was the immigration of many dissenters to the New World. So, in 1620, hundred of dissenters, the Pilgrim Fathers, left Holland, where they found first shelter, and went to America on the Mayflower, where they founded New Plymouth. When James' son Charles I came to the throne, things changed quite a lot because he married the Catholic daughter of the King of France, so he was a supporter of Catholics. Like his father, he avoided Parliament and ruled 11 years without it. The Commons were strongly Protestant and denied the king money for more than a year. This confrontation led to the Petition of Right in 1628, which stated that the king could not imprison without trial or impose taxes without the consent of the Commons. The petition became the foundation of all later declaration of civil rights, but Charles dismissed it because he thought that he was king by divine right. In 1640, he summoned the parliament, the so-called short parliament, because he needed money to fight a rebellion in Scotland. So this short parliament refused to give the king the money. And a new parliament was elected in the same year, the so-called Long Parliament, which became one of the institutions of England history because it reflected the change in wealth that had taken place in the Tudor period, with a shift from the medieval church and landed aristocracy to a rising middle class of small land owners, city merchants, and other professions. So now it was the new middle class who wanted the king to be subject to parliament. Parliament kept working to assert control over the king, passing many laws to reduce his power. So in 1642, Charles entered the House of Commons to arrest the extreme member of Parliament, but they had already escaped. So the king raised an army of royalists and declared war to the Parliament. So between 1642 and 1649, there were bloody battles between the royalists and parliamentarians. It was a struggle between tyranny embodied by the king and the parliament, which represented liberty. It was also seen as a conflict between the aristocratic landowners and which supported the king, and the middle class of merchants, artisans, and small gentry. The Puritans were supporting the parliament, while the royalists were supporting the king. We must say that parliamentarians were also called roundheads because they considered long hair sinful. So they cut theirs very, very short. The two parties were also regionally different. Royalists were mainly concentrated in Wales and Cornwall, while in the city of London was house to the parliamentarians. The commander of the party of parliamentarians was one member of parliament, Oliver Cromwell. He was a very religious man, and he thought that his mission was to free his land from superstition. Charles I was captured in 1648 and condemned to death, and his execution took place in 1649. The new parliament abolished monarchy and declared a republic, the Commonwealth. The House of Lords was abolished, and censorship was introduced. Cromwell took the new model army to Ireland for a campaign of repression, and also he gave himself the title of Lord Protector of England, Scotland, and Ireland. In 1655, Cromwell divided the country into 11 military regions and minor generals, but we don't care about that. But his government, as your book says, is established a kind of despotism, because even if he strongly believed in the Puritan spirit and in a moral renewal, he was not different from the former king. What happened during this period? Well, Puritan rules were introduced, like the execution of adultery, the abolition of popular pastimes, games, dancing, and theater performance. We already have studied that during this period, all theaters were shut down, and also in pubs. So every kind of entertainment was just ended. And as you can see in the slide, also Christmas and Easter were banned and replaced with day of fasting. When Cromwell died in 1658, no other one was so charismatic and so strong to take his place. His son Richard held the office for 8 months, but no more. And at a certain point, the parliament voted the end of the protectorate. And in 1660, it invited Charles II to return from his exile in France, and the monarchy was restored. That's why we call this period the Restoration or Augustan Age.